When a blood-stained letter bearing the royal seal arrived at 221B Baker Street, Sherlock Holmes realized that the crown itself was under attack, and Britain's future hung in the balance. The midnight summons, the grandfather clock in the hallway of 221B Baker Street, had just struck midnight when the urgent knocking began. Not the polite rap of Mrs. Hudson or the familiar rhythm of Inspector Lestrade, but the measured, authoritative knock that could only come from someone accustomed to having doors opened immediately. Dr. Watson reached for his service revolver, but Sherlock Holmes was already at the window, peering through the gap in the curtains. "Put away your weapon, Watson. Our visitor wears the livery of Buckingham Palace." When Holmes opened the door, a tall man in royal blue uniform stood in the gaslight, his face grave with worry. In his white-gloved hands, he carried a sealed envelope marked with the unmistakable impression of the royal seal, but the wax was stained with what appeared to be blood. "Mr. Holmes." "Dr. Watson," the messenger said with barely concealed urgency. "Her Majesty Queen Victoria commands your immediate and absolute discretion in a matter of the highest importance to the crown." Holmes accepted the letter with steady hands, but Watson could see the slight tension in his friend's shoulders. In all their years together, they had never received a direct summons from the palace. "Gentlemen," the messenger continued, "you are to tell no one of this communication. The very future of the British Empire may depend upon your success." But what the letter contained would shock even the unshakable Sherlock Holmes. The message inside revealed Britain's darkest secret, the Crown's desperate message. After the royal messenger departed into the London fog, Holmes carefully broke the blood-stained seal. Inside, written in an elegant feminine hand that trembled with obvious distress, was a message that would change everything. "Mr. Holmes, I write to you in the darkest hour of my reign. My grandson, Prince Albert Victor, heir to the throne, has vanished. But this is not a simple disappearance. I fear it is the work of a conspiracy that reaches to the very heart of my government. 3 nights ago, Prince Albert Victor received a message claiming to reveal the truth about his parentage. The letter suggested that he is not my son Edward's legitimate heir, but the product of a secret liaison that would invalidate his claim to the throne. Before I could speak with him, he disappeared from his chambers in Windsor Castle. His bodyguards were found unconscious, and there was evidence of a struggle. Most troubling of all, we discovered this note pinned to his pillow with a ceremonial dagger. The note read, 'The true heir shall be revealed when the false prince falls.' Mr. Holmes, if Prince Albert Victor is not found within 48 hours, or if word of this conspiracy reaches the public, it could destroy the monarchy itself. I am told there are members of Parliament who would use any scandal to abolish the crown and establish a republic. You must find my grandson and expose this conspiracy before it. Tears apart everything our nation has built. Your sovereign, Victoria Regina." Watson stared at Holmes in amazement. "Holmes, this is treason we're talking about. If there truly is a conspiracy against the royal succession, Watson, we are not merely dealing with treason. We are facing the potential end of 1,000 years of British monarchy." Holmes refolded the letter carefully. "And I suspect this conspiracy is far more complex than even Her Majesty realizes." What Holmes discovered next would shake the foundations of Britain. The trail from Windsor by dawn, Holmes and Watson were on a train to Windsor Castle, traveling in a private compartment arranged by the palace. The countryside rushed past their window, but Holmes's mind was clearly racing faster than the locomotive. "Watson, consider the implications. If someone truly has evidence questioning Prince Albert Victor's legitimacy, they hold a weapon that could destroy the monarchy. But if the evidence is fabricated, then we're dealing with masterful forgers and conspirators." "Either way," Watson replied, "the stakes couldn't be higher." At Windsor Castle, they were met by Sir Reginald Forsyth, the Queen's private secretary, a thin, nervous man who looked as though he hadn't slept in days. "Mr. Holmes, thank God you've come. The situation grows more desperate by the hour. This morning we received another message from the conspirators." He handed Holmes a second letter, this one sealed with black wax instead of the traditional red. "To Her Majesty, your grandson is safe for now, but his safety depends upon your cooperation. Tomorrow night you will announce that you are abdicating the throne due to ill health. You will name Prince Edward as your immediate successor. But you will also announce that Prince Albert Victor has renounced his claim to the succession. If you refuse, or if you involve the authorities beyond Mr. Holmes, whom we know you have already contacted. Prince Albert Victor will meet the same fate as his great-uncle, the Duke of Cumberland, who died so mysteriously in 1851. You have until sunset tomorrow to decide the fate of your dynasty, the true guardians of Britain. Holmes studied the letter intently. Sir Reginald, I need to examine Prince Albert Victor's chambers, speak with the unconscious guards if they've recovered, and review all recent correspondence to the palace. Of course, Mr. Holmes. But there's something else you should know. Sir Reginald's voice dropped to a whisper. We have reason to believe that someone within the palace itself is part of this conspiracy. The evidence Holmes found would implicate the unthinkable. The inside Betrayal Prince Albert Victor's chambers at Windsor Castle told a story of careful planning and inside knowledge. Holmes examined every detail with his magnifying glass while Watson documented their findings. Watson, look at this. The lock on the prince's door shows no signs of forced entry. Whoever took him had a key, which means someone with palace access was involved. But more interesting still, Holmes pointed to the window. The prince's window was opened from the inside, and there's a rope secured to the radiator. He wasn't kidnapped. He climbed out voluntarily. Watson stared in disbelief. You're suggesting Prince Albert Victor was complicit in his own disappearance? I'm suggesting the prince believed he was meeting someone he trusted. Someone who convinced him that his legitimacy was genuinely in question and that this secret meeting was necessary. Holmes found more evidence near the prince's desk. Traces of a particular type of sealing wax, fragments of expensive writing paper, and most tellingly, a partial footprint in the carpet that matched expensive Italian leather shoes. Sir Reginald, Holmes called to the secretary. I need a list of everyone with access to the prince's chambers, and I need to know who in the palace wears Italian-made shoes. Sir Reginald's face went pale. Mr. Holmes, there are only 3 people in the entire palace who wear such expensive Italian footwear. Her Majesty herself, Lord Chamberlain Wickshire, and he hesitated, clearly reluctant to continue, and Prince Edward, the Prince of Wales, the Queen's son and heir to the throne. The implications were staggering. If Prince Edward was involved in his own son's disappearance, it meant the conspiracy reached to the very heart of the royal family. But Holmes' next discovery would reveal the shocking truth. The double deception. Sir Reginald, I need to speak with Prince Edward immediately, Holmes declared, and I need complete honesty about the royal family's recent activities. Mr. Holmes, I'm afraid that's impossible. Prince Edward left for Scotland yesterday morning, immediately after learning of his son's disappearance. He said he was going to coordinate search efforts with authorities there. Watson and Holmes exchanged meaningful glances. How convenient, Holmes murmured. And when exactly did he depart? At first light yesterday, Mr. Holmes, but surely you don't suspect. I suspect everyone until evidence proves otherwise. Sir Reginald, I need you to send telegrams to every major railway station between here and Scotland. I want confirmation of Prince Edward's journey, and I want it within the hour. While they waited for responses to the telegrams, Holmes examined the ceremonial dagger that had been left on Prince Albert Victor's pillow. Under his magnifying glass, something extraordinary emerged. Watson, this dagger bears the crest of the Order of the Garter, but look closely at the metalwork. This isn't an authentic royal ceremonial piece. It's a very good forgery. What does that tell us? It tells us that our conspirators have access to royal imagery and symbols, but not necessarily to the genuine articles. They're creating an elaborate theatrical performance designed to convince both the Queen and the public of their authenticity. The telegraph responses began arriving within 45 minutes, and they painted a troubling picture. Prince Edward had indeed boarded a train to Scotland, but he had disembarked at York and had been seen taking a private carriage toward London. He never went to Scotland at all, Watson realized. No, Watson. Prince Edward is somewhere in London, and I believe I know why. Holmes's revelation would expose a conspiracy of love and desperation. The heart of the plot, Sir Reginald, Holmes said with growing urgency. I need you to tell me everything you know about Prince Albert Victor's personal life. His friendships, his romantic attachments, any recent changes in his behavior. Sir Reginald shifted uncomfortably. Mr. Holmes, there are certain aspects of the prince's private life that are delicate matters for the crown. Sir Reginald, the crown itself is at stake. Delicacy is a luxury we cannot afford. The secretary sighed heavily. Very well. Prince Albert Victor has been attached to a young woman named Lady Margaret Ashworth. She's the daughter of a minor nobleman, but more importantly, she's Catholic. The Queen has made it clear that such a marriage would be impossible. Holmes's eyes lit up with understanding. And recently, the prince has been increasingly distressed about the situation. He loves Lady Margaret deeply, but he knows that marrying her would mean renouncing his claim to the throne. The Royal Marriages Act and the Act of Settlement make it impossible for a Catholic, or anyone married to a Catholic, to inherit the crown. So Prince Albert Victor was already facing the choice between love and duty. Someone used that knowledge to manipulate him. Watson was beginning to understand. You think someone convinced him that his legitimacy was already in question, so he might as well follow his heart? More than that, Watson. I believe someone offered him a solution that seemed to solve all his problems. A way to be with Lady Margaret while supposedly serving the greater good of Britain. Holmes pulled out his watch.
Sir Reginald, I need the address of Lady Margaret Ashworth, and I need a fast carriage to London immediately.
We have less than 18 hours before the Queen's deadline. And I believe Prince Albert Victor is not in danger. He's in hiding, believing he's doing the right thing. But the real mastermind was someone they never suspected. The puppet master revealed. The carriage ride back to London gave Holmes time to piece together the final elements of the conspiracy. Watson, consider what we know. Someone with intimate knowledge of royal protocol, access to high-quality forgeries, and detailed information about Prince Albert Victor's personal dilemmas. You're thinking it's someone close to the family? I'm thinking it's someone who benefits from the chaos this would create. But not in the way we initially assumed. They arrived at Lady Margaret Ashworth's residence in Belgravia as the afternoon shadows were lengthening. The house was modest but elegant, befitting a minor nobleman's daughter. But as they approached the front door, Holmes noticed something that made him stop suddenly. Watson, look at the carriage in the mews behind the house. Do you recognize the coat of arms? Watson squinted at the elaborate heraldic design painted on the carriage door. Good God, Holmes. That's the personal carriage of Lord Chamberlain Wickshire. Indeed, and Lord Wickshire has been notably absent from our investigation. Despite being one of the most powerful men in the palace hierarchy, they approached the house carefully, and through a partially open window, they could hear voices in intense conversation. You must trust me, Your Highness, came a cultured voice that could only belong to Lord Wickshire. Your father's plan will work perfectly. By tomorrow evening, you'll be free to marry Lady Margaret. The succession crisis will be resolved, and Britain will have a stronger monarch. But Uncle Wickshire, deceiving grandmother this way seems, Your Highness, your grandmother is old and her judgment is clouded by sentiment. Your father understands what's best for the empire. A republic would be a disaster for Britain. Holmes and Watson exchanged glances. They were listening to treason of the highest order. The final confrontation would reveal the truth about loyalty and betrayal. The Crown's true guardian, Holmes, didn't hesitate. He walked directly to the front door and knocked with authority. Lord Wickshire, Prince Albert Victor, this is Sherlock Holmes. By order of Her Majesty Queen Victoria, you will open this door immediately. There was a moment of shocked silence, followed by hurried whispers. Finally, the door opened to reveal Prince Albert Victor himself, a young man with intelligent eyes who looked remarkably like his grandmother in her youth. Mr. Holmes. But how did you... Your Highness, you've been the victim of an elaborate deception. May we come in? The sitting room revealed the full scope of the conspiracy. Lord Wickshire sat behind a desk, covered with forged documents, wax seals, and what appeared to be drafts of various letters. Lady Margaret Ashworth sat nearby, tears streaming down her face. Lord Wickshire, Holmes said with cold authority, you've been orchestrating this entire affair, but not to destroy the monarchy, to control it. Wickshire's composed demeanor cracked slightly. Mr. Holmes, you don't understand the complexities of royal succession in the modern world. On the contrary, I understand them perfectly. You convinced Prince Albert Victor that his legitimacy was in question, not to remove him from the succession, but to force him into a position where he would renounce his claim voluntarily. This would make Prince Edward the direct heir, skipping a generation. And why would that matter? Watson asked. Because Prince Edward has been having serious health problems that the palace has kept secret. Problems that would make a long reign unlikely. Lord Wickshire was positioning himself to be the power behind a weakened king, essentially ruling Britain through a puppet monarch. Prince Albert Victor looked horrified. Uncle Wickshire, is this true?
You told me father was trying to help me.
Wickshire's mask finally fell completely. Your Highness, I've dedicated my life to serving the crown. Everything I've done has been to ensure Britain remains strong. By deceiving the Queen, kidnapping the heir to the throne, and attempting to manipulate the royal succession? That's not service, Lord Wickshire. That's treason. But Holmes had one final surprise that would change everything. The Queen's Justice, Lord Wickshire, before I place you under arrest. There's something you should know, Holmes said with a slight smile. Her Majesty Queen Victoria has been aware of your conspiracy for the past 3 days. Everyone in the room stared at Holmes in shock. Impossible. Wickshire sputtered. The Queen's letter, her desperation, was genuine but not complete. Her Majesty suspected that someone within the palace was involved in her grandson's disappearance. She asked me not only to find Prince Albert Victor, but to identify the traitor within her own household. Holmes pulled out a second royal communication. This morning, while you thought you were manipulating the final stages of your plan, palace guards were searching your private chambers. They found correspondence proving your involvement with Republican sympathizers who promised you a position in a new government if the monarchy fell. Wickshire's face went white. You don't understand. The monarchy is dying anyway? I was trying to control the transition. You were trying to profit from it. But you underestimated both the Queen's intelligence and her grandson's loyalty. Prince Albert Victor stepped forward. Mr. Holmes, I owe you an enormous apology. Uncle Wickshire convinced me that I was helping to prevent a constitutional crisis. I never meant to cause grandmother such distress. Your Highness, your willingness to sacrifice your own happiness for what you believed was the good of Britain shows exactly the character that makes you worthy of the throne you'll someday inherit. Lady Margaret finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. What will happen to us now? Albert and I, Holmes smiled warmly.
Lady Margaret, I believe you'll find that Her Majesty is more understanding about matters of the heart than Lord Wickshire led you to believe.
Especially when those hearts belong to people who put duty before personal desire. The royal resolution, 2 hours later, back at Windsor Castle, Queen Victoria received her grandson with a mixture of relief, anger, and grandmother's love. Holmes and Watson stood respectfully in the background as the royal family reunited. Albert Victor, the Queen said firmly, you have caused me considerable worry. But Mr. Holmes has explained the deception that was practiced upon you. While I cannot excuse your naivety, I can forgive it. Grandmother, I'm so sorry. I thought I was protecting the crown. And what of Lady Margaret? Do you still wish to marry her? Prince Albert Victor looked surprised. Grandmother, I thought... The religious differences. My dear boy, I've been queen for over 50 years. I've learned that the strength of the crown comes not from rigid adherence to every ancient law, but from the wisdom to know when those laws serve the greater good and when they do not. Holmes stepped forward. Your Majesty, if I may, there is precedent for royal marriages that serve both personal happiness and political wisdom. A Catholic princess who converts to the Church of England can marry a Protestant prince without affecting the succession. The Queen smiled. Precisely, Mr. Holmes. And I believe Lady Margaret has already expressed her willingness to make such a conversion out of genuine faith rather than political expedience. Later that evening, as Holmes and Watson prepared to return to Baker Street, Queen Victoria asked to speak with Holmes privately. Mr. Holmes, you've done more than solve a case. You've preserved the monarchy and taught me something about the balance between tradition and wisdom. Your Majesty, I merely followed the evidence where it led. And where it led was to the truth that loyalty and love, properly understood, need never be enemies. I'm creating a new royal commission on constitutional matters, and I'd like you to serve as an advisor. Holmes bowed deeply. Your Majesty, it would be my honor. As they rode back to London through the night, Watson reflected on the extraordinary case. Holmes, do you think Prince Albert Victor will make a good king someday? Watson, I think he'll make an excellent king. Today he learned that true leadership means being willing to sacrifice everything for others, but also having the wisdom to know when sacrifice is genuine service and when it's merely manipulation. And Lord Wickshire will spend the rest of his life in the Tower of London, contemplating the difference between serving the crown and serving oneself. The carriage rolled through the London fog, carrying 2 men who had helped preserve 1,000 years of British history, proving once again that truth and justice could triumph over even the most sophisticated deceptions. Elementary, my dear Watson. Sometimes the greatest mysteries are hidden not in shadow, but in plain sight, disguised as loyalty.